Hi guys, welcome back to the Trekway. And Gray absolutely missed it. He
I missed
absolutely
you.
made an arse of it. Oh well,
Yeah.
nice one, Gray. Hi guys, welcome back to the
I'll just
Trekway
drink really slow, and that way people can
with
see
Gray
me.
Gamer myself. Gray, you're too into that. It's like muscle memory now, doing all that at the
I
start.
know.
Now that you're like, you don't tell me to rehearse my lines 2 minutes before. Um, We don't have any more still Picard to talk about, which is a shame. But we do like
Could
doing
talk about it, but
specials. Well, we could, and one of these officers is in this special. To be fair, we will be talking. We'll be doing some more specials between now and the launch of Strange New World season 2 in next month. Gray, I believe.
June, yeah.
June. Okay.
June 15th, I think.
Cool. I'm looking forward to it. I am looking.
Yeah.
So by the way, if anyone has ideas and specials that they want us to cover in Star Trek, please just comment below. If we've not already done it, we will certainly entertain it. We welcome. I like comments more than I like subs, to be fair, and that sounds a bit silly, but it means there's interaction. And don't forget, get the paperwork out of the way, so to speak. Catch us as well on audio podcast platforms if you just don't want to see our faces. And you can get us on Twitter at The Trekway. And don't forget, my man here, Grey Gamer, he's got an entertainment show, which is done once a month. And he can be found at Grey's Green Room on Twitter, YouTube, and the podcasts. And you can get him on Twitter at Grey's Green Room as well. And don't forget, if you like your gaming as well, if you're watching Star Trek, you're not a gamer, why not? Then you can join our colleague and our friend Nick at Extreme PC UK on Twitter, YouTube, podcast platforms, all the same again.
Yep.
And we might be recording that later. We'll see.
If you didn't know by now, Trev and I are really busy.
We do a
We
lot.
do this once a week. We do the gaming once a week. We do my thing once a month. So already that's 9 podcasts a month.
I potentially use Thursdays for podcasts, and I can do 4 podcasts in a one day. And people think I'm mad.
I forgot. I do about 9, but then you have your football one.
Yeah,
Is that every week?
my football stroke soccer one. Yeah, I do that. No, once a fortnight because it's too much.
Okay.
That's the one I have to do the most research on because
You should put that in the description.
I sent you a copy. Remember, Gray? I don't know if you ever
I mean,
listened to
yeah,
it.
I know. You should put it in your description down there.
It's nothing to do with Star Trek. Otherwise, I would.
What?
Anyway, people want football.
Well, wait a minute. Technically, PC gaming has nothing to do with Star Trek either, but we still put the info.
True.
Got to pump yourself, dude. Put it down there.
Anyway, digressing
This
already.
man is football all the way.
So, what are we going to be discussing today, Gray, and why? Okay, I haven't asked you why we're going to do this, but I want you to tell us why we're going to cover this.
Well, we try to think up different things for specials, and I've loaded up Trev with a bunch of ideas, but one of them is a favorite first officers. So we always look at the show, we always know the captain, but there's always a camaraderie or closeness of the top 3 or whatever characters of the bunch. Not to say that the others don't have their time to shine; they all do. But when you're really looking at it, it's usually the top 3, and that would be your favorite, your first officer, and maybe whatever, the doctor, whomever.
Yeah.
It started with TOS when you had Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and then it kind of, Scotty a lot too, and then it kind of drifted along the others. So we felt it was fair to sit there and look at what we think is favorite first officers going all the way back to TOS. So
all Star Trek's on the cards. You can.
Yeah,
we're talking about anyone now. It's the usual format.
I think include every first officer we can think of, but we may miss, 1 or 2. But we'll see. We're trying to cover all the bases.
There's noticeable mentions at the end, of course, but we do our usual format is top 3 or top 5, and we went top 5 from least favorite to most favorite. And least favorite doesn't mean we don't like them; it's just we have to pick a top 5. So, and we saved the best at the end, and we'll talk about why we like them, like strengths, weaknesses, any notable episodes that you know of that they're in. That's optional, Gray. I didn't note that down because that's getting a bit nitpicky. But if there's, you go, oh yeah, this 2-part special, this episode, they're great, and mention it, and that'll prove they're. But and even the mighty Spock won't be perfect, so we can find negatives and pluses for all these guys. So, okay. without further ado, we'll dive in and we'll be a bit geeky. Why the hell not? Start off
Sure.
with fifth or least favourite, and we'll let Gray go first. Who he chose, why, good, bad, all that
Okay.
kind of stuff.
And again, when we say least favorite, it's not technically least favorite. It's just that we have to put it in some kind of order.
Yeah,
And unless a first officer is really not that good, we tend to give them all the respect. But when you have to break a list down, you got to break a list down. So
yep.
Una Chin Riley, which is Strange New Worlds, is my pick for fifth. And basically my reason is really simple because she's not really been proven yet. We haven't seen that much of her. It's only been one season, and what we see of her is good, but we really don't have anything to base it on. So it's kind of she falls to fifth place as default, I
Yeah,
guess, in my mind. I assume when season 2 starts, which is gonna, I guess, start off with a bang because season 1, Una was in trouble. Uh, because she basically was against some of Starfleet,
it was genetically
commands
engineered or
rules,
altered, wasn't she?
right? And this is gonna be interesting to see how they resolve this or properly so that she gets back on the ship. So it will be kind of interesting. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's my reason. It's just mostly as a default
A-
fallback because
Anything you didn't like in any of the times we've seen her that, or like you say again, not seen her much, so can't really comment too much.
yeah, not really. I can't really. I mean, I've liked everything I've seen with Strange New Worlds. I can't really put my finger on anything. If I had to make one criticism, if you want to call it that, it's just that the chemistry has to develop or has developed over the time from the first episode to the last.
It has, yeah.
And I think that the chemistry actually evolved quite quickly, which was really good because a lot of times when Star Trek series come out, that chemistry doesn't start off with a bang. It may take a season, or more before it really gels. But this pretty much gelled by the time you got to the end, and so well, in fact, that and I'm not really spoiling anything here because it's season 1's been out for some time now. But the original chief engineer was it Hemler? I forgot his name. He ended up dying in the first season, and
Chief Hammer.
Hemmer, and I didn't know that was going to happen. And I'm sitting there going like, "Oh, I
Didn't
like
see
this
that.
guy. He's
Yeah,
cool."
yeah.
And then he dies, and I'm like, "No!" So I felt really bad, which shows you in a short time how invested you got into a character. So
What's that got to do
so
with
we
number
really
one?
can't. Right. So for number one or the first officer, we can't. I mean,
Yeah,
I like what I've seen, but how do you rate that? I mean, you really can't. But I believe she deserves to be in fifth because of the overall fact that the series is good and she's good, etc. So
sure. Um, no surprise. Well, actually, maybe it is a surprise. I picked the same as Gray, and she's someone I actually thought of pretty early. Now, to caveat this, I'd had this conversation briefly with Gray earlier on today on Discord that we can and we cannot. It's entirely up to yourself, Gray, whether you choose particular versions of a character, right?
mhm.
Mirror universe, bloody Kelvin timeline. Although, why would you pick that? It's all opened. You can take from that what you want, or you can talk about the character in general. So no one's judging. I just wanted to say that. Now, the reason I mention that is because number one, because I put that down, that's what she's known as, even though we finally found it, have her full name on Strange New Worlds, which we didn't before, because she's there, obviously, in TOS as well, but she's hardly ever used, which is a shame.
Right.
And that was Gene Roddenberry's wife?
No, that
Oh,
was it was Gene Roddenberry's wife was
yeah.
number one, and the only reason that character didn't last was not because of Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah.
That was because that back then, believe it or not, I know it sounds weird today, but in the '60s, the executives said, "Oh, yeah, we can't have a woman in that high of a position. That's
And they
just
made
not
too many sacrifices already for Gene for what he could have on screen. So he made that
correct."
sacrifice.
Exactly. So, it was a shame that it went down that way, but a lot of things were different in the '60s than they are today.
And that was Majel
Angel
that done it.
Barrett,
And she also done the
yeah,
voice of the
the
computer
computer.
and the next generation. In fact, modern Trek as we
She was
know it. Not in
Right. She was
TOS.
tr-
It wasn't TOS, but it was modern
she
tech.
wasn't
Like
TOS's computer, but she was TNG and then
TNG
on.
era, as we shouldn't dub that. I think
Yeah.
that's fair, safe to say.
She was also Deanna Troy's mother.
Yeah, she was. She was a pain in the arse, wasn't she?
She was great. She was great in
No,
that
she's
role. She
great,
really
but
did a good job.
the character was a pain in the arse. I meant
Oh yeah.
it
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
bad. She was brilliant in the role. Picard would be
Actually, there
like,
was.
"Oh God," she was hitting on Picard.
I don't know if
She
you
was it
remember, but
Riker?
there was an episode. Sorry, there was an episode that Majel was in where she starred as Troy's mother, and she was on Deep Space Nine. And there was an episode where she was stuck in an elevator or whatever, a turbo lift or whatever happened in DS9 with Odo, and Odo had to go back into his bucket. He was actually falling apart, and he was very embarrassed to let this happen in front of Troy's mom, and it was a really touching scene because he was just, and she kept on telling him, "I'm not." I understand. And this is one of the few times where she was very, very emotional, and she told Odo, I know what you have to do. I'll help you. I won't say anything." And he finally let loose, and she actually, like, she had like a long gown on, and she actually let him little go ahead and just like land right in her gown, and she wrapped it up
I forgot
so
that.
that he could
Weird.
rest. And that way, by the time they got rescued, he could reform into Odo, and nobody would know anything went down. And it was a
Ah.
really, really good episode. I mean, Major really got a chance to shine in that episode, even more than she usually does. So if you ever remember, I don't remember the name of it, but it was a great Deep Space Nine episode. Really good.
I'm glad you reminded me of that because I had totally forgotten about that, and I think that's bloody brilliant, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
I will go back and watch it actually. So yeah, as I was saying before, there's different versions of this character. There's two versions at least, and we are, I think, speak on I's behalf. We're talking about the actress that plays us, Rebecca Romaine, who plays a
Hmm.
Kraken role. She's got that kind of dry wit. It's very Spock-esque, actually, even though you don't really see much of
Yeah,
that in
kind of.
TOS. And we like her. I like her so far. I think she's doing a great job. I think she is very easy on the eye, and I'm not going to apologise for saying that. I'm a bloke. I'm a guy. But she's got many, many talents there, and I think she's going to make a cracking first officer for the rest of the season. I can't put any
Mhm.
negatives on her, really. Not at this stage, anyway. It's possible
Right.
later on we might find that. So, and it's about time these characters were fleshed out a little bit because we hardly ever saw. That was a masterstroke, having her mainly in Strange New Worlds.
Right.
Yeah, so fourth place is interesting. Yeah, it's safe to say. Gray, do you want to tell us?
Yes.
You like her and why?
This is our first I don't understand pick with Trev here. I picked Chakotay from Voyager to be number
Don't spoil
4.
mine. Don't spoil mine.
So I felt as I started thinking about it, because I didn't see Voyager up there, but Trev will tell you why. Although
Chakotay's not on the list for me.
and he hasn't told me, so it'll all be a surprise. But I thought that Chakotay needed to be in fourth place amongst the ones that I was considering. Um, he didn't start out at, he was the Maquis. So in Voyager, it was kind of a little bit of a rocky relationship at the beginning. But once he kind of settled into being number one to Janeway, it really worked out well, and I thought he did a really good job, actually. So I felt he deserved to be there, and I thought he did an excellent job. And hey, look, the series did well enough, so there had to be something going on that was right. But he played off very well to Janeway, so that's another thing. If you don't play off well enough, it ain't gonna work.
And
And he did well.
any kind of memorable episodes that you recall that he really shined in, or you don't need? I'm not talking about titles. I'm just talking about leaving a description or.
There probably is, but I can't really think at the moment, only because it's been so long since I've seen some of the episodes. I've got to go back and watch some old Trek again. I mean, there's so many episodes, especially with TNG, and I don't know what it was the other day. I saw a clip of a TNG episode, and yeah, I'm not saying I didn't forget it, but it was so long that I almost forgot what was going on in the clip. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it gets that way when you don't. I mean, with TOS, it's not so much, but that's because back when TOS was on and became a world phenomenon, all you had was 3 seasons. So basically, I watched every one of those, probably 10 times. So those are ingrained in my memory for the most part.
Yeah,
Um, Even though I've seen Voyager more than once, I can't really say whether I've seen every episode more than once.
I have.
Many, yes. Well, I know you have. Yes, you grew up on that one. But despite that, though, I would love to go back and watch. And occasionally I will pop on an episode and go back and watch some of the older ones. But yeah, I can't think of one that stands out right now. I'm sure there is,
Okay.
but I can't think of it at this moment.
Any negatives about this character that you didn't like maybe in the series?
Chakotay? No, I just thought that it was interesting at the beginning when he was Maquis, and I didn't know how they were going to resolve that, and I didn't know whether that was going to make for a proper first officer.
Yeah,
But
true.
the way Janeway explained it when it all went down was she felt that first of all she felt that he would be a good first officer. Second, it was almost kind of a necessity because there were more than one member aboard the Voyager that were Maquis. And if you put somebody in a position of power right next to the captain that is Maquis, it's going to go a long way to making the rest of the Maquis people feel more
Yeah.
at home. So you kind of had to do it too. Not that that was her only reason, but since she liked Chakotay so much and felt he would be good, and it did fulfill the second reason, that he was Maquis and other people were Maquis, it made sense. So
It's a solid choice. I don't have Chakotay on my list, but I'll discuss briefly why I don't have him on my list and pretend he's in
hate him.
there somewhere, even though he isn't. Um,
I want to hear this one. Go
he
ahead.
he wasn't. He never done anything outstanding. If I think of my first officers that I'm going to talk about, especially when we get to
Mhm.
the first top two, three, he was never outstanding in his field. He was just one of these guys as a character, as an officer in Starfleet that quietly got his job done, and he done it well, but he just quietly done it. He wasn't a flamboyant first officer to his captain, right? So
Mhm.
nothing majorly stand out. That's why. That's the main reason, and that might sound a bit lame, but we've got my five are based on what they've done. Something stood out for me that I liked. And when I tell you my fourth choice is, Gray will think I'm nuts. There's a reason. In fact, I kind of hinted to him as to why I included this fourth choice.
Well,
Um,
before you do that, though, wait.
I'm not going to say it
So,
yet. Don't worry.
based on your reasoning that you just gave for Chakotay, then what what I think is kind of interesting is you still picked Una Chin Riley as fifth,
hmm
and she hasn't done a whole lot, and it was only one season.
I think she was more standy outy, to use a phrase.
In one season
Yes,
versus seven?
yes, yes. Yeah,
Man,
Chakotay was very meh, you
he
know.
was very Chakotay.
Whereas Rebecca Remain's take on the character very Spock-esque, like very logical, very sensible, very knowledgeable, but with a little dry twist of humor onto it, which I like. And
Mhm.
she's got a great angle going forward. He had the Maquis thing, and every time they done Chakotay special episodes just on him, or mainly just on him, they were crap. The ones with the boxing and stuff, and I just don't like him. I don't dislike. Can I just clear something up? I don't dislike Chakotay. Don't dislike the character.
Right,
Voyager's
right.
my favorite Star Trek series, so he done a job. He just you, I've got high standards here. I'm not going to apologize for that. But touching more on Chakotay, to be fair. Um,
I get your reasoning. I do. I just thought because the body of work was so much larger
true,
that
true,
Chakotay
yeah.
should have been in fifth position then.
Um, Yeah, so like say Chakotay for me, that I don't think he was written well enough for him as well. It's nothing to do with
Yeah.
Robert Beltran's performance. He was absolutely fine. I think maybe some of it subconsciously came through because Robert said that before Voyager he wasn't a Star Trek fan, and after he wasn't massively a Star Trek fan either. He didn't really go to many conventions or do much Star Trek work after. He just left it be.
Sure.
So maybe that potentially seeped through, but I don't think he was written for well enough. Some of his episodes were crap. The angle at the end with Endgame that had a love affair with 7 and 9 was just awful. Why? They were trying to put a storyline in there for the sake of it when it didn't have to exist. It made no sense.
Right.
So I think I'd blame the writers a little bit for not making them better. But also, I think Robert not being a massive star. Not you have to be a Star Trek fan. You don't, but I think sometimes
there's
it can
there's
help.
people that have done Star Trek that never even heard of it,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
exactly. So it
and
probably
ended
doesn't
up
count.
being great.
So I do
I
like
actually,
him
I'm actually gonna follow your line of reasoning in a minute. I'll
for your third choice
I'm not.
or for later choice,
No,
right? Okay,
you'll see.
okay.
It's coming up.
So my fourth choice is Jack Ransom from Star Trek Lower Decks, voiced by the great Jerry O'Connell. I recognised that name and the voice as soon as I heard it and saw it. It was brilliant. Now, it's an animated show. People can poke fun at it. They're allowed to. I laugh at it. I don't treat it too seriously. It's done really, really well for Paramount. That's why they're making another season of it, and they may do a couple of more seasons from what I'm hearing. So it's funny. Don't If people try to take it as hardcore Star Trek, they're going to be disappointed because while
Okay.
while it's in the same TNG type era of Star Trek, it's designed to be funny, whereas you don't get that same humor in other Star Trek shows. So just to put that into a little separate bubble, I enjoy it. It's funny. Jack isn't the funniest character on this show, but the scenes he does get, because it's obviously it's the Lower Decks that get the limelight, but the bridge crew do appear in it, most episodes, at least a little bit. And every time Jack comes in, he just saves the day with his muscles. Any opportunity for this man to take his shirt off. I mean, there's literally an episode where they were worshipping him as a god because of the muscles and all that, and he
Yeah,
literally
that was
helps
funny.
save civilization with the muscles. So, he takes his shirt off and he asks people if they work out, and he makes me laugh. It's different. It's something unique. I've seen him in how many seasons have we had Lord Decks now? Two. Three?
Yeah,
Three. So
three,
I
three,
can't remember
three,
the
three.
got. Yeah, so we've had him for a while now, so there's plenty of content to go on. Like there's other characters I prefer in Lower Decks than him. He's like third or fourth choice down the list, like Shax, forgotten the doctor's name, Doctor
Well,
Cat, as you call
the
them.
cat,
They're
Dr.
funnier.
Cat, yeah.
They're
He's my
funnier.
number one.
But I prefer the bridge crew to the Lower Decks, if I'm being honest with you. But that's my reason. It might sound a bit silly. Now, there's a downside to that you don't see him as much as first officers in live action series. And
Right.
obviously, he's very vain. But he does have a soft spot. Him and Beckett had a ding dong for a while, Gray, if you remember. And they actually had a mutual respect by the end of the last season for one another. They weren't best friends, but they had a mutual respect. So he does have a soft, sensitive side, but he obviously deflects a lot with the guns and the abs and stuff. And it's funny. Anything you want to touch on in Jack there? I realised what I just said there. Anything you want to touch on
not
Jack? His abs?
Oh yeah. The 6-pack, 8-pack, 12-pack, whatever. Um, I like the character. I get what you're saying, but when I saw you pick it as number 4, I did one of these.
What
So,
do you want to talk about one of your notable 6 or 7 places now? Or do you want to touch on it later?
um, no, we'll touch on that later.
Okay. Because we'll talk about that separately because
Yeah.
it's valid and warranted. So yeah, that is
Sure.
Jackie Boy. Loved him, funny. We've never seen that from a first officer before. So good. Third, we're heating up now. The top 3 is what it's really about. The prizes are Gray.
Yeah.
Why did you select this character and why? And this is when I went, what the hell? He's not in the top 2. I was going to fly over to Florida, bang his head against the wall, and sack him. Go.
Okay, so I picked in number 3 spot of first officers. I picked Riker from TNG. Now, yeah, I know. And when I said that, same as I reacted to Jack on the 4th, he's Trevor's going, what? But the funny thing is that I'm using the reasoning the same as you did a moment ago, as far as how it was written, because even though the whole cast of TNG was important, it was a family, it meant a lot to all of us, and you can prove that by watching Picard season 3 and how he felt about it. So it's not that. It's just that if you have to go back through the body of work of all 7 seasons, and I'm not the only one. There are plenty of fans that have said the same thing, that Riker was never given, not I wouldn't say never, but rarely given enough material to really shine per se. Um, and he's probably shined more in the movies and more in season 3 of Picard, and even a little bit in season 1 and 2 of Picard than he did in the entire TNG series. So based on that, okay, on the pure fact that he could have been written better, he could have gotten uh, better material or been just a better character altogether. And I kind of blame the writers some on that one. That's why I put him in third. If he had been the Riker that we're seeing now in the movies, and especially in season 3 of Picard, I wouldn't have an issue about moving him even past 3 into 2, or whatever. But I can't do that based on the whole body of work per se.
Okay.
And it's not just a body of work; it's also whatever performance wise, this and that. But that's kind of where I kind of settled on that one. So that's my
Any
reasoning on that one.
any notable episodes that you recall him being in that you think, oh wow, he was good in that?
No, I mean I can't sit there and single out ones, but there were a couple times where Riker had to more or less be in command, or had to be in command of a situation that Jean-Luc Picard wasn't or couldn't. And I think in those particular episodes, those were great because you really got to see him stretch. But when he was in just his role of number one, like, hey, look, he was a great number one. There's no doubt about it. He knew what his role was, and he played the role like he's supposed to. And there wasn't any point in time, in TNG, where he didn't play the role properly with command and with presence, even if it was only for a minute or two.
Yeah.
You could easily say an actor only getting like maybe a few lines in an episode would just kind of like, phone it in because he doesn't have much to say. He never did that. He never phoned it in. He always gave it his all, even if it was only a little here and there. So obviously he deserves it.
Okay. Okay. I won't touch on him yet because I've got that later on. So
Hmm.
I'd counter that and raise somewhat and counter it. Blah blah blah. Solid choice though. Regardless, he made the top three, so I should thank you. I guess I think. Um, my third choice is Major Kira Nerys, played by the excellent Nana Visitor, who I absolutely adore. Like, she's absolutely brilliant. All these people
Hmm.
that weren't necessarily big Trekkies before they joined, or were Trekkies but came out of their individual Star Trek franchise having a love for it. She absolutely loves Deep Space Nine. You see it in the documentary What We Left Behind. Brilliant documentary. Recommend you watch it if you haven't. Um, she was different for me because it was the first officer that I'm aware of that wasn't part of Starfleet that came in,
Right.
and while she had the rank of major in Starfleet terms, think of it as a you get contractors now for the jobs that you do in your business. You could think of her as a kind of liaison or a contractor. Bajoran, been through the Bajoran Wars with the Cardassians, had a massive chip on her shoulder, and rightly so. Fantastic actress. And she played the role really well at the start. I wasn't sure how it was going to work with her. But the Bajoran side, she's got to run represent Starfleet at the same time. And there wasn't really massive ding dongs between her and Cisco, but at the start, they weren't best of friends either. It took later on, a couple of seasons in, before they started to really respect each other and they could
Right.
trust and rely on each other. And Cisco really relied on her. She looked after the Starfleet thing just as much as she looked after the Bajoran side of things. And what I like about her was also she very sassy, very opinionated, very we'll call a spade a spade. She's very ballsy as well. Took no shit. She's probably the toughest first officer that I know of out of the list of ones I put down. You wouldn't mess with her over anyone.
Yeah.
She would, serve your ass to you in a plate. So big fan of her. She done the role really, really, really well. And as well, she was very good at the tic tacs, the old tactics and military planning and that kind of stuff. That worked really well for her later on in Deep Space Nine because she comes from the Bajoran Resistance, and she even learns she doesn't love Cardassians by the end, but she doesn't hate them as much as she used to because there was at least one episode where she has close contacts with Cardassians that are not like Garrick or anything or anyone on the station. Where
Gul Dukat.
Dukat, yeah, she learns that not all of them are bad, and it actually softens her a little bit. And that's, I can't remember the name of the episodes, but they were later on in Deep Space Nine, and it was actually, I used to dislike Deep Space Nine, right? Because I think I've discussed this in a favorite series, because
Mm.
having a Star Trek show that's not on a starship is wrong, and I still agree to that philosophy to this day. And that's why Deep Space Nine's best seasons were when the Defiant was involved. And I think the viewing figures and people's opinions kind of back me up in that. You don't have to agree with it, of course. It's just my opinion on it. Because you had the space station and you had the Defiant. You had the best of both worlds. And it was at its best then. And Nana made the best of the tools she had at her disposal. I think she done a cracking job in it. I'm trying to think if there's anything I dislike about Major Kira Nerys. I guess sometimes she maybe can hold her tongue a little bit, which I love. Gray knows me. You're an arsehole, I'll call you an arsehole to your face. It's kind of like, don't hold back. And she's a bit like that, this person, this character, you know, and sometimes in that kind of environment, you've got to hold back a little bit, and that's where the Starfleet training would have came from if she was a full Starfleet officer. Because you don't do that at Starfleet, you're the model politician when it comes to these kind of things. So that's the only thing I can say about her that I dislike. You don't have her in. Oh no, you do later on, Grace. I'll let you touch on it at some point. Apologies for the sirens. That's
red alert. You just have to be careful.
That is red alert. How rude. They realise I'm recording a podcast. That's very rude. So yeah, absolutely love, adore this character. And we got to see her again in Lower Decks, the last season.
Only episode we
yeah, her and there was two characters. Who was the other one? Was it just her from Deep Space Nine? It was in Lower Decks. Ferengi.
We're both doing it.
No.
Why are we both forgetting the name?
You've forgotten the most famous Ferengi of all time. Quark.
Quark.
Quark's bar, yeah. Quark. Yeah.
And Armin Shimon played used his voice for Quark, as well as Nana Visitor playing.
Both of those characters.
We also had
brilliant.
Who else was in it?
There was only two. I think it was only two.
Oh yeah, people were saying that they should have shown Odo somehow, but they didn't. People were looking for like a respect shot somewhere.
But they need starships after these people, so respect. Yeah, respect.
But the whole thing was just so good. It didn't really, to me anyway, it didn't really seem like a Lower Decks episode because so much respect was going on and so much was happening that reeked in a good way completely of Deep Space Nine that I almost thought it was like another lost episode or something. That's how good it was.
Kinda, yeah. Well, great. Listen, do you want to just segue into the kind of your second favorite first officer and why?
Number two. So in the second position, I put Kira of Deep Space Nine, and again, there's lots of reasons, but probably one of the main reasons is, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, is as far as what this first officer Kira had to do. There was a lot of material written for her. I mean, she was constantly on screen, constantly doing stuff, constantly in the bar arguing with Quark all the time, which was classic. There's lots of stuff going on between her, Odo, and Quark. So all this stuff was constantly written into the episode because the majority of the stuff took place on the station.
Yes,
and she was always really involved a lot. Not to say that Sisko wasn't, but she had so much material and such great lines and such good acting.
There's certain things that Sisko couldn't do that she could because of she was Bajoran, so it worked well, didn't it?
But she had many episodes where she had like some great stuff written for her and super episodes that she was in. And I just felt that her body of work was huge. And so to me, she deserved the second place spot purely because of all that, going on. She had far more, in my mind anyway, she had far more material over the course of the 7 years that show was on as compared to Riker and TNG, as compared to Chakotay, etc. There's just I mean, you would have killed for some of the stuff that was written for her.
Yeah.
And so
It
that's
was
why I
good
had to
work.
just put her in second place. It was
Uh,
just I couldn't see anything else.
She was pretty lucky though, Gray, that people on Deep Space Nine had to have better stories because, like you say, for a good while it was mostly on the space. You had to have better
Mhm.
writing, better episodes than on a starship, where starship could be the hero for the episode or an alien
Right.
race or something. So, um,
I
solid
mean, in Deep
choice.
Space Nine, even though the Defiant was great, don't get me wrong, but this one of the main characters in Deep Space Nine was Deep Space Nine.
Yeah,
The
it's Space
station
Station.
itself.
Oh, especially in the
And
first episode, they literally had to move the bloody thing,
yeah,
move the station, which it wasn't designed to do, so that it could be set up the way it is. So, yeah, right. Anything
and I
you?
think Deep Space Nine has become a bigger Star Trek hit after it left the air
I
because
agree.
like you were saying, there's a lot people were split down the middle because some said, "Oh, space station, I'm not going to bother," and so they didn't bother watching. But then some of them that came around and finally started watching it, now they love the series. So it's actually picked up much more since it went off the air, which is funny because that's exactly how TOS did. When TOS was on, it had a good audience of diehard fans like myself, but when it went off the air, it freaking became worldwide.
Yeah, great.
And
This is why we need to wait for Starfleet Academy to come out. Yes, it could be like Beverly
uh,
Hills 90210 or whatever it's called, but it could be decent because it's not on a starship all the time.
I
I'm
I have a
just
new
saying,
name for
just
it.
saying.
It's Star Flub Academy. That's what I think. I can't see it being good, man. I really can't.
Great. Is there
Can't.
anything you disliked even slightly about Shakira Nerys?
No, I
She
mean,
got a promotion later on, did she not? By the time of the Lord X episode, what was after Major, or was it not Major to begin
Lieutenant
with?
Commander. I think she was Lieutenant Commander or
Well, you
something.
don't get a major in Starfleet, so it was obviously a Majoran rank. I'm sure she had
Yeah, I
a
remember.
promotion after that.
She
People
did.
know. Comment below.
Well, she was running the station. Period. Since Cisco left, it's her station.
I don't think she's captain though.
No, but I don't think it was
Hmm.
captain they called her, but
I
whatever.
know, I know, Colonel. So they were using the
Okay.
British
Okay. Okay.
military terms more than the American ones, and there's
Hmm.
similarities, but it was Colonel Nerys. That was higher up. There you go.
Yeah.
Got it. Solid choice, Gray. Solid choice. Some could say you copied me. I put my 5 down before you. Read to see. Right, okay. We're getting to the good stuff. Between my second and first choice was difficult. It was hard. Hear them, obviously, you'll have an idea who left. It was difficult. It generally was difficult. And I'll obviously explain why I edged one over the other. But Gray's going to go first. No, I'm going to go first because I'm still on my second choice.
You're
Uh,
still in the second. Yeah.
and that would be Spock. Now, where do you start? Where you end with him? I'll try not to talk about him too much because I want to give Gray a bit of limelight as well. I didn't grow up with him, but still, I've obviously watched reruns of TOS in the past where he's been outstanding. I remember him more for the TOS movies.
Movies. Yeah.
Fantastic in that. That's when you got to really flesh out his character. He's obviously made special guest appearances and other things, like Star Trek: The Next Generation, and then he done that crossover with the Kelvin universe, which kind of shame they used him as that bridge, but he
Yeah.
crossed
Yeah.
over.
I wasn't. I like seeing him, but I wasn't fond of that whole
Yeah,
that
I
whole bit.
know. See, right, the thing is, we're going to then talk about like notable additions to kind of the list. However, sometimes other versions are good to mention in the one line. And what I mean by that is Leonard Nimoy's take, number one, of course, never going to doubt that. However, every other version that's came after has been good. And I'm not going to judge them too closely together because I don't want to disrespect the man. But the Kelvin verse guy, I forgot his bloody name as well. He was in Heroes. He's a
Oh yeah.
massive Spock fan and Star Trek fan. I thought he done a cracking job. I really did.
Yeah.
And Leonard Nimoy himself has said, cracking job. You've got Ethan Peck. So far,
Right, but since Strange New Worlds came
Brilliant.
out, I would prefer Ethan over
Agreed.
the guy who
I
played
would as
Kelvin.
well. I would as well. And that's not a slight and
Yeah.
the other guys take. It's just we are seeing more of Ethan. We are seeing more of a young Spock as well, who embraces other parts that you might not see so much in TOS going forwards. And it's designed to be like that. You see more of his wife, for
Mhm.
example, and the closeness they have. So I like that aspect of him. He's always got Kirk's back, and they're obviously friends, the two of them, as well as colleagues. So I love that about him. I guess it's very hard to find slights in these characters and negative points, but if anything, I guess he was very reluctant for a while to embrace his human side. It was almost like that's disgusting. I'm Vulcan, but he's half and half. I think
Mhm.
he eases off as it goes on, where he is more in touch as an older Spock, speaking to Kelvin versus Spock.
Right.
Obviously they're meeting up, which that was a brilliant scene, I must admit, despite it being a bit movie. Um, I think he's chilled more as an older Spock, Leonard Nimoy's take, and he's like giving advice to his younger self that listen, chill, like embrace your human side and be the best of both worlds. And the only slight I can find in the guy, apart from that, I love him because he had very, very dry sense of humor. Very, very Sahara Desert dry sense of humor, which I absolutely love because I love dry humor. It's great. And dark humor. So, cracking, noticeable episodes and movies, there's too many to mention. Too many to
Sure.
mention. But I loved him in the movies. He's brilliant. Maybe a special mention to Star Trek 4 The Voyage Home because that cracked me up. For the same reason I've got Jack Ransom as number 4. Well, double dumbass in you or whatever he said, and and some of the funny things he was doing, it was just hilarious. So, Leonard Nimoy,
Actually,
we miss
what
you,
was
my
it?
friend. We miss you, and you are my number 2. On you go, mate. Sorry.
Sounds good.
You were going to mention
Um,
something to that.
no, that's okay. I'll hold it for the number one spot that we're coming up to.
Okay, okay. Well, fire away, Gray. Who's your number
Okay,
1 and why?
well, there's only one left for me for the first spot, and of course, I pick Spock, hands down. Drop the mic. Nothing else to say. No, only kidding. I always have something
Oh,
to say,
bye then, Gray. I'll do
but
the rest myself.
like no, for me, I grew up on that show, so
He's your
I remember
boy.
seeing pretty much, and I remember when I was a kid when that show came out, I had to beg my parents to let me stay up to see it,
Why?
especially because
On
the
late
first 2
first time.
seasons not well, the first remember back then, kids used to go to bed earlier than they do now. It's a whole another story. The first 2 seasons, it wasn't too bad because it wasn't on all that late.
Mhm.
But the 3rd season, they put it on Friday nights at 10 p.m. on purpose to kill the show. Even though they brought it back for a 3rd season because of the letter writing campaign was so humongous and all the press picked up on it, they almost had to do a 3rd season. But they decided, all right, well, we're going to do a 3rd season because we don't want to look like idiots, but we're going to stick it in the Friday night slot and kill it because that slot back then was known as killing any show that goes in it. Um, so 10 o'clock to me as a kid, I'm going like, no. And I'm sitting there begging my parents, please, please, please let me stay up. That was the only night of the week that I was allowed to stay up to watch, uh, Star Trek. Every other night, off to bed. So, so that's a big deal, growing up with it. But the other reason is because, look, Spock laid the groundwork for everything that came. TOS laid the groundwork for everything that came. If there was no TOS, there would be nothing. There would be no Star Trek. Period. Um, so sometimes for that alone, you got to give the props. He was the first officer. He was even in the original pilot. He was even though he wasn't first officer, he was a science officer, and then he
Yeah.
became first officer after they finished that original pilot, The Cage. He's the only first officer that's worked under Captain Pike and Kirk.
Who?
So he's actually been around,
In fact,
so to
more.
speak.
Was he
But
not there for who was before Pike again?
April, I think,
Yeah, he
but
was
he
so
wasn't
April as
around
well.
for.
But he wasn't,
I don't
no.
know if he was with April.
Yeah.
So the thing is that being the first is already enough right there. But on top of that, the character was just so unusual because nobody was doing anything remotely close to something like that. Most of the stuff that was on back then, which was good stuff, was the Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, and most of the time the aliens and stuff are always portrayed, even if it was good, was only portrayed as being something that was either offbeat, weird, horrible,
Green or grey.
whatever, and so there wasn't really anything as far as a intelligent per se alien that would do stuff like this. So this was the first, and the whole thing going back to even the ears and stuff like that, which was really funny, is getting things past the censors back then is nothing like it is today. Today almost everything goes. But back then they didn't want Spock because of the ears. Why? Because they said his ears made him look demonic.
Do you
And
know the
so
joke on his ears? Do you know the joke, the famous joke?
which one? Go ahead.
Well, it's actually more for Shatner, but it makes more sense for Spock. How many ears does Spock have?
I don't know how many.
People are
Two.
going to unsubscribe en masse now. He has three: left ear, the right ear, and the final front ear.
Oh jeez. That's bad. Well,
Carry on.
anyway, so the point is that this was, despite the fact that the censors wanted him out, they wanted to take the ears away, okay, and just make them normal looking ears, and they had a heck of a fight trying to keep it in. So finally they won and
Good.
they kept the ears, and thank goodness for that, because that's everybody, became he became so definitive for that he was definitely an alien. Nimoy had the roll down pat. We all know this in this through the series, through the movies. I mean, there's nobody that could be Spock. And even when they did pick the actor that played Spock in the Kelvin Kelvin universe, and now in Strange New Worlds, they had to be really careful.
Zachary Quinto, I found out. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, and Ethan Peck even was talking about this too. Both Zachary, I believe, and Ethan Peck um, went to Leonard Nimoy's estate and talked to the son and other family members and said, "Look, this is what I'm going to do." So they had such high respect for Nimoy that they would actually go to the family
I love that.
and say, "This is what I'm going to do. I would really love your insight. Anything you can tell me that your father did that I could bring with me to the character," and it really helped them a lot in portraying the character that they now do.
Well,
Um,
Zachary Quinto met the great man, so at least he's had
yeah,
some opportunity to bounce off him. Not so much with Ethan, although he's probably met him
right.
at some point.
Yeah, Ethan really didn't have that chance, but he did be able to talk to the son and to the family, and it meant a lot too. So that was all really nice. But that's how much respect the actor had, aside from the fact of the character. But there are so many, 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 many scenes that Spock was in the TOS that were just classic. And when you stuck the three of them together, Shatner, I mean, excuse me, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, that was freaking unbeatable.
Yeah, yeah,
Period.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, they just played off each other so well. It was seamless. I mean, everything that went on between the three of them were just,
And
they
they
were
were, and
great
they were,
friends, of
and they were
course, too.
yeah,
But
friends. Yeah, they were all friends.
but it just played off. I mean, it almost seemed like it didn't even have to be written. It was
Yeah,
just
yeah. You don't
normal.
have an interview with any of these guys, Gray, unlike some of the other guys, which is
Yeah.
important.
The only reason I don't is because at that time when I was interviewing, a lot of these guys, see, I ended up interviewing the people because they appeared at Star Trek shows that my friend produced, which made it handy. But the problem was that the top three, those guys, right, demanded a lot of money.
Well, for
So
Star Trek conventions, so they only went to the big ones, basically, then the ones that could
yeah,
afford
they
them.
only went to the huge ones, that exactly. And believe me, my friend would have loved to have brought them in, but it was like, I mean, I'm telling you, the fee that they would charge would be a minimum 3 to 5 times the fee for any of the others. And it just was
That's
like,
kind of a
meh.
shame. They all love Star Trek. I know they do, but when money starts to become more important, it can be just as important. But that's a shame, isn't it? But hey ho.
I guess, but I mean, it is a job. And back then, you know, they weren't doing the series. It was they were doing some of the movies, and actually for a 10-year period, they weren't doing the movies, so they had to earn money any way they can. So I can't blame them. I
Uh,
mean, exactly.
uh,
Um, but in any case, I just can't see how any way you can't pick Spock for number one. Um, I I agree with I don't disagree with, by the way, with your outlook on it. For anybody out there that thinks I might, I don't disagree. I'm not going to sit there and like hold Trevor. You can't. It's just that in my eyes, that's the way it has to be. There's just no other way,
Once I talk
you
about
know.
my number one, it makes more sense as well.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. So that's basically it, more or less.
anything you disliked about his character, even if you want to copy my one or whatever.
No, I mean, there were a couple episodes that were goofy. Like most
Yeah.
people
Oh,
understand that the
Spock's brain. Yes, that's what I
Fox
meant.
Brain is universally picked as probably the worst episode of the TOS, and the only other one that's picked worse, but not because it was bad, but because it was extremely dated, was the one where they had all the space hippies.
And the movie, and
uh,
the Kelvinverse movie, because why did you ever do that, Leonard? Because it was a paycheck. Because that was why did you get yourself
yeah,
involved in that crap?
yeah, I don't get that either. But other than that, there's no real. I can't really. I mean, every time he's on the screen, he's got something good to say. I mean,
True.
again, it's the perfect foible, the perfect playoff on all the characters. It just was,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
Ethan's doing
and
a
it,
great job being early Spock, which we don't really
yeah.
see a hell of a lot of. So he's doing. I absolutely love his taking him. I absolutely love it. So
Look, the guy he has the out of the bunch, he probably has the biggest shoes to fill because he's playing a character that's already well established. Pike was established, but only in terms of the cage, nothing more. So so Anson Mount is doing an excellent job, but he only and I'm not trying to make it sound like it's easy. It's not. But he is actually fulfilling and creating the Captain Pike character as we see, or, as we see him. But Peck had to jump into the Spock role knowing that Spock was always around and what he was like and what he became and blah blah blah. So it's tough. You got to sit there and like be able to do it the right way. And everybody, there is some detractors that say that, well, he shouldn't be showing so much emotion because that's not Spock and blah blah
early
blah.
Spock it is though. That's I disagree with that, man.
Right,
I'm on your
exactly.
side.
People don't remember these things, but when you look at the cage, Spock in the cage was emotional. Not extremely, but he was. And that was part of Spock's journey through his life. He was emotional, learned to embrace Vulcan 100%. So became much less emotional, and then all of a sudden, as he got older,
We
saw the
chilled out a
entire
bit more.
picture.
Yep.
He saw the entire picture for
As we
what it
do in life,
was.
as we all do in life, Gray.
Right, exactly. So,
Yeah.
so there you go. So it's nothing really I can bad except for those few little things.
It's a
Maybe.
cracking choice. Can't go wrong with that. Like I say, it was very
Yep.
close to being my number one as well. Lol. Um, but the reason my first choice is Riker, and I'll touch on what Gray said before as well. It is William William T. Riker. I've just put in the middle initial in there. Although I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does have one somewhere actually. Will Riker is my
Good
favorite.
question.
Now, I'll quickly just initially agree somewhat and encounter Gray's point from before. I kind of somewhat agree that he didn't have as much material as other first officers, but he had a lot more than bloody say Robert Beltran for example.
Oh yeah,
A lot
sure.
more than I'm trying to think actually. Maybe not. Maybe that's the best
Well,
example there.
he had more than and we haven't mentioned this because we made a special note at the bottom, but he had more than Saru does in
Yeah,
Discovery.
because
He had more than, in my opinion, Jack Ransom. He had more than
yeah,
whoever the first officer of Enterprise
uh,
was, which I don't remember.
to Paul. It's because
Okay.
um, well, no. I'm not going to actually disagree with you. I do agree, but for example, Saru was more than one rank. So he's like 3 ranks or something now. He's had in
Yeah, so you can't
total.
even right.
So it's
But just in
you
terms
can't go
of
that.
stuff, I mean, the
Yeah,
body of work
you need to be.
he had was still much better, much more than that then.
So for me, Riker, I didn't properly grow up with him. I remember I watched TNG on repeat. Actually, I didn't really watch it first time because I was still pretty young. However, I do love the guy because of the movies as well. After, I think he had more action than maybe you give him credit for, Gray. And what I mean by that is
Mhm.
certainly more again than Robert Beltran, Chakotay. He has,
Yeah.
I can name episodes, The Best of Both Worlds 1 and 2. Fantastic in that. The episode where he goes up against Picard and Picard's old Stargazer. and he has to outsmart, and Wes goes back to get that science experiment. You go to the Riker maneuver, and by the way, Gray, if you haven't watched that Shuttle Pod interview with Jonathan Frakes, watch it because it's brilliant. They talk about the Riker maneuver, and I thought it was going to be in Insurrection, the movie, where he uses the joystick to actually fly the Enterprise, which is a boyhood dream. Imagine that. That's genius. Let's fly the biggest, baddest starship, the whole of Starfleet currently, with a bloody joystick. Oh, we'd kill for that. So, and then someone says, Geordi said after, I'm not surprised if they call that Riker maneuver, where he sucks up a lot of gas that's, that it can be, it gets exploded essentially by a torpedo afterward, the sonar's torpedo. And he does it at such an angle that I thought they were going to talk about this, but no, we're talking about the Riker maneuver, which is actually with that one episode of TNG, I can't remember what it's called, where that's a tall seat, and he's a younger, more flexible guy. He actually mounts it from above and comes down and sits in it. He puts one leg over and sits down. I don't know if you recall that, Gray, rather than sitting down the normal way. And they were having fun and jokes about if that was much taller, it would have been painful and all these kind of things. And that's what the Riker maneuver is. So when I see these things, they make me laugh. I thought the fact that it was a lot more pivotal. He was so loyal. He stayed in Enterprise. He rejected several transfers or promotions to become captain. He could have been captain a lot quicker. His loyalty is unmatched to anyone, even up there with Spock and Kirk's. And you see that in Picard season 3. Yes, he got to flesh his chops more in the movies and in Picard. And his lines are hilarious with Worf. They're just absolutely comical. In terms of, potentially best looking first officer on the male side of things. I don't know, the ladies liked him. Young Jonathan Frakes.
Must have been that beard when he grew it.
Yeah, that episode, with the one was it one movie? An Insurrection, actually, yeah, where he actually shaves it off.
Shaved it off, yeah.
And I'm like, and then you actually see Data go up to it, and he's like, yes, Data, it's as smooth as a baby's bum or bottom or something. And Data goes up and goes, I just walks away, genius. Right, I don't like him when he had, that's one of the nitpicks, and it's a silly one. Never ever be beardless again, Jonathan Frakes, William Riker, because the beard is what makes you, when he has the beard, and he's first officer, and he's got especially the movie suit, which is the black and the purple. I really loved that. I really loved that.
That's a nice outfit.
And that was a slight on TNG for the uniform's been crap for so long. So I think he kicked ass. I thought he had many memorable episodes. Maybe not as much as the other guys, granted, Gray, I give you that. He... Behind Kira, I think he's the next badass, personally. That's my opinion. Not stating it as fact. Spock is a bit different. He's supposed to be more chilled, but you wouldn't mess with Spock either. You really wouldn't mess with a guy. Like, he could
seen a couple of times where he was he had to be a little more
the Vulcan nerve pinch or whatever, man. He could take you down. Vulcans are stronger than humans. They're supposed to be. And he's shown to be tactically astute. Loyal, supportive, and episodes he did do, like the best of both worlds. He's brilliant in that. But yeah, I don't want to rabbit on too much about that because, like I said, I do love the guy, but not many nitpicks like the one I mentioned before. And yeah, maybe he could have had a bit more material written for him because I think he admits that in that. But if you haven't watched it already, guys, the Shuttle Pod show with the two guys from Enterprise is brilliant. I love Jonathan Frakes because just talking, I could listen to the guy talk all day. He does curse and swear a bit like a trooper, which I love because just him being fully relaxed and chilled. He genuinely enjoyed it.
He's very down to earth. So.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I love. He's not pompous or stuck up or anything, and he's actually a very talented director. And if you watch it, he'll talk about why he wasn't offered more Star Trek movies or movies after the Thunderbirds movie because that bombed massively, and he was in charge of that. So go watch that, guys, and you'll get to know the character and the man a bit more. But yeah, that is my and as well, like across not just TNG, I loved him across everything he'd done, TNG movies, Picard, whatnot. So That is our top five. Now we have some noticeable guys we put in afterwards. I haven't noted them down because I don't really see them relevant, but I'll chip in with Gray. Um, Gray's got here in sixth place and seventh place, respectfully, Saru from Discovery and Jack Ransom that I covered from Star Trek Lower Decks. And Enterprise, you were going to talk about, you've got her name. That's what I mentioned earlier on. Gray, don't discount Enterprise. He hasn't seen enough of it. That's the problem. Tell him, guys, the last two seasons are great. He doesn't listen to me. To Paul, who, oh my God. Wow, stunning. Absolutely stunning. But the actor was brilliant as well. Don't get me wrong. She was really.
Which was one of the knocks when she played the part originally.
Great. See, to talk about her, right? She, like, if you let me indulge with her, and I want your opinion based on what you know, not what you've seen. She was special advisor. She was part of the Vulcan Institute, whatever they call that, right? They're calling it Starfleet.
Yeah.
She was on board as an advisor, Enterprise, right? And at the start, she was very ding dong with Scott Bakula's character Archer, and very much against it. And this is the regulations. She's proper 100% Vulcan. There's no none of that scummy human blood anywhere near her. She's 100% staunch, right? But again, later on, she manages to chill out a little bit more. She's still emotionally herself, like we're not emotionally. But you will see when she goes into season 2, I think it is, when they have that Xindi arc and expands, there's a mineral in there that actually affects the neurons of a Vulcan brain, where they actually break down, and she gets addicted to this. It makes you go wacky, and she actually starts injecting it into herself, and she becomes a nervous wreck, and she gets it on with one of the bridge officers, and it gets a bit steamy, and there's a whole Vulcan ship that gets lost in Expanse because all the crew.
You know they wrote that episode just because of that.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, 100%. There's an episode in Expanse where the Vulcans go nuts. So there's a ship. You don't see enough Vulcan ships. I like the whole round warp nacelle thing. It's very unique. Yeah. They all go bonkers, man. They go nuts. It's like a mutiny. It's like something out of a horror movie because this stuff breaks down their mind so much that they become old Vulcans from back in the day before they conquered their emotions. She was, I forget her. I remembered her name until recently. To Paul. I will find it because she does a cracking job. You don't know much about her though, Grace. So
no, only what I saw the first season. That was enough.
But you see, like you see, I mean, about the ding dong. She was very much the attitude that Vulcans had over humans.
Yeah,
you shouldn't be out here and blah blah blah, and this is how it should be done. And I'm quoting your Starfleet regulations and blah blah. These. It was very much like that. She a lot less like that later on. Same as Spock. Same as Spock. Who you want to talk about 6th and 7th place? Saroon and Jackie Boy.
No, I mean, Saru I loosely placed in 6 because he was the first officer, then he was a captain, then he was a first officer, then he was off the ship, then he came back.
Then he's a special advisor or some crap.
Yeah, I don't know. I lost track of everything, which is partly why I'm not.
And his story arc as well, Gray, was brilliant. Remember, he conquered the whole fear thing he had, and
yeah, no, I'm not taking anything away from the actor because
Doug Jones is brilliant.
Doug Jones is a really good actor, and for some reason he really excels when he's playing these alien characters. Prior to this, he played a character in Babylon 5, and he was so good in that series. I mean, it was just unbelievable, and he was again covered with all this makeup and whatnot, and he really, I know he's won some awards, but he really is overlooked on some of the awards that the man should get. I mean, nobody can act through the prosthetics and stuff that they had stuck on him like he could.
Massive high heels, man. This guy's a genius.
There was only one other actor, and again back in Babylon 5, and Andreas, I can't pronounce his name. It's Andreas Katsoulis. He passed away not long ago, but he played an alien in Babylon 5, and he was also really good. I mean, you would look at him, or you would look at Doug Jones, and you wouldn't know that they're really a human underneath there. You just thought they always look like that, and stuff. And
they don't get enough credit. These guys. They don't get enough credit because they're covered up.
Yeah, it's just, how do you do that? I don't understand how he can get the feelings out. It's so weird because I've seen other people wear makeup as aliens, and yeah, it's cool and stuff. But man, you got to be you got to be a good actor to get through heavy prosthetics like that and try to get a feeling, to the viewer. It's not easy.
Great. I could argue that Saru was maybe even better as like somebody. I think you could argue for me that Saru was a better captain than he was a first
Oh
officer.
yeah, no doubt,
He's very
no doubt
commanding and
about it.
very disciplined and very chilled, and you respected and looked up to him. So,
If I was able to redo something, I would go back to Discovery and I would make him captain for the entire show with the ship that looks a little better than the one they have,
hmm.
and it probably would have been a a bigger hit because he was really good as captain, and it really shined. And it's not to diss any of the other actors. I'm just saying that if they had the guts to make him being like the first alien captain, if you more or less, at least that we've seen, kind of that would have been Superman. That really would have been great. I would love to have seen it, but
Um,
it didn't happen. So
the Paul actress, I can't believe I've forgotten it, is Jolene Blaylock.
okay.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and my God, eye candy, man, sensational. But I always talk first about their acting ability first because I don't want to be so. But yeah, to Paul there, and then I think there's one person we haven't mentioned, and there's a very good reason for that. Can you guess who it is?
Mm,
Michael
no.
Burnham.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, purely because Discovery is not as good as the other Star Trek shows by a long shot.
Yeah,
Um,
but even with her though, she kept on getting in
well,
and out of trouble, and
she
then she would like go into
ag-
jail, and then
a-
she got this.
again. What was her what's her name? I can't actually try to remember her name actually. But Michael Burnham.
Yeah, we're doing good here, aren't
So
we?
yeah.
Today we're getting there.
Sonique Martin Green. I can't remember all the
Yeah.
names. There's too many. She's brilliant. She's a brilliant actress. She was brilliant in The
Oh
Walking
yeah.
Dead. She's
No, she's
brilliant
great.
in She Owns It. But she can only work with the content that's given to her, the lines that are given to her, right? And it
Right.
got a bit too. I'm not saying there shouldn't be emotion in Star Trek, but it got a bit. Hey, this is a very good point. Great. They discuss. Have you seen that Shuttle Pod show with Jonathan Frakes yet? I'm
Yeah,
not putting you on the spot. Yeah.
uh, I watched about 2/3 of it.
So they talk at one point about they use a phrase that I've forgotten what the name of this phrase is already.
Mhm.
Modern terminology in talking Star Trek, right? So it didn't seem as alien. It could be more relatable. See, like the dry humor, the line with Worf and Troy and him when he talking about a twosome, and he's like, I'll come and make
Mhm.
it a threesome. And he's like, do you even hear yourself? He wouldn't have ever
Yeah.
said that back in TNG. It was never written that way, but it's now written that way, which I've got used to it now. I like it. That's maybe the way it should be. But at first, I was a bit weird. So the same kind of thing happens with Cynic Martin Green. Modern Trek, not the TNG era. Modern Trek is played to that, and I wasn't a big fan of it really.
Yeah.
So she done a great job. She was just like Grace said, in and out of trouble. She was the first officer, then she was no bloody officer, then she's captain. And I don't
Right.
disagree with being captain. I think she, for the brief time that she's in it as captain, what, a couple of seasons by the end of this fifth season, she is a good captain. She's done a good job. Her crew respect her, look up to her. She's not perfect, but she's a better captain than she is, again, first officer, like Saru again. So, and she was always
Yeah.
going to be captain, so, like, but as a first officer, because that's what we're talking about, nah. She's the one that bloody started the war against the Klingons when crying out loud. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm bored. Yeah, we should
Yeah.
fire on them, Captain. What have you done? You know, so he's never going to
Yeah,
be on that
there's
list.
lots of stuff like that in that series. That's why it was just like the whole premise shouldn't even have bothered. They're going like, well, we don't want to have a captain of a ship, and we don't want to. And I'm going like, dude, that's the formula.
I thought it was
I
genius,
mean,
Gray. I thought it was. You don't like it? I thought it was genius. Why? Like Lord Dex doesn't focus on the bridge crew. I thought it was genius, no?
no, it's not that. Is that in with Trek on TV, there's always a hierarchy that makes sense. So it should focus in on the captain and his two main cohorts. It always works. It always works if done properly. This time, the focus was on her, and in Discovery, she didn't know what role she had for the first 2 seasons. It was just crazy. I couldn't keep up anymore. I'm going like, what are they doing with her? Just
Yeah.
constantly just just messing around. It was almost like taking you know, a can of reaching into a can and just pulling out a piece of paper, and whatever's written on it, you'll go with it.
Yeah.
It's just,
Eeny,
that's
meeny,
good. That's
miny,
good.
mo. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, we digress. But yeah.
That's what we do. So, I mean,
Yep.
it was interesting talking about these like side characters. They were never going to make top 5, but we had an interesting top 5. I respect Gray's choice for Spock as number 1. I think he respects my choice as Riker as number 1 because very hard to pick between. Were you? No, I mean, actually, I've answered my own question before I even asked it. Were you stuck ever even slightly between Spock and Riker, and you're not because you put hands down, drop the mic. So that was a no-brainer for you, especially because you put Riker in third, actually. So
You know, also too, there was and I can't remember who it was exactly. Oh yeah, it was. There was the first officer in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Captain Decker, who was in command of the Enterprise, had a first officer, which
done a
I
decent
believe was the
job,
girl.
respectful,
I
decent
think
job.
Yep, and there was the girl, I think, was his first officer. So if you really want to go back and start looking at stuff, that was a brief stint, but
If you
there
want
was
to
a first
nitpick.
officer then too. Yeah.
True, true. Yeah, okay, guys. We will probably wrap it up there. It's been a good long chat. If there's any particular specials you want to see for next week or between now and when Strange New World Season 2 comes out, please let us know and we'll try our best to cover them. But I guess until then, thanks for coming along, Gray, and do your thing, my man.
Remember, upvote, look down there for other links and stuff, and live long and prosper.
You'd be sacked if you hadn't done that, man. That's important. Thanks, guys. Cheers. Until the next time. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.